Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. You can't just rely on the point of sale. You have to get to the point of thought.
My man.
Brian Vieaux. I love that quote. Our guest today, friend of the Culture Matters podcast, many mutual friends, such high recognition, great reputation in his space. He's been in the industry that he's in at least 33 years. What month did you start in 91, by the way? I know
November.
November. So, um, just around the time this small little baby was brought into the world, the host of the Culture Matters podcast. I feel so connected to you
All right.
already. But for many years, I got into the business as a mortgage originator first, but very quickly rose into leadership and helping the companies actually grow. And a handful of years ago became the CEO, president of FinLocker, this amazing technology changing the landscape of the culture in the mortgage industry. We're going to get into Brian Vieaux. Thanks so much for coming on the Culture Matters podcast, author of Rethink, which is very interesting topic we're going to get into with a co-author, Kyle Draper. Everyone loves that comes on the Culture Matters podcast. So I'm excited. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, man, I'm excited too. I've been a big fan of this content that you create. Love your mission and culture matters. Let's be real.
Thanks.
It
Yeah,
matters.
amen. I actually have a question about the employment relations. That was an interesting field that you were interested in younger. And then what is that exactly? And
It's,
because it
I mean,
seems
so
cultural
yeah,
in some way.
since you already called me out as an old guy, back then there was no HR degree in colleges, so there was all kinds of like these sub categories of education or tracks you could take. So I was a employment relations and international economics. Those are like the
Oh,
two minors, which are two weird things to pull together. But you know, I'll be real here. I wasn't like super excited about the schooling part of school. So I looked at where some of the athletes at Michigan State were going through. I'm like, well, if they could do this course, I could probably do it. So, but in all
wow.
seriousness, I did originally think, being in the kind of the HR space was interesting to me, even though I never
Hmm.
spent a formal day there.
Wow.
We're all in HR every day, whether we lead people or not. And in all,
Why do you say that?
because if you just think about the words HR, human resource, right? We are all resources, either to ourselves or to others, and so we're all in the human resource business to some degree. And some of the stuff I learned way back then in the late 80s, 90s, and that employment relations kind of track, if you will, I think layered on top and helped me be a better younger leader when I lucked into my first leadership position, honestly.
Was it a mentor or
No, you
some
know what it was?
circumstance?
It was in 1991, the par interest rate, the going rate at the time was somewhere in the high 10s, low 11s,
Wow.
coming down from the mid-teens rapidly. So like the first ever, if you want to call it the first ever refi boom was happening, in the early 90s. And when I joined, the five of us on the team, and in 6 months the five became 60. And
Wow.
because I happened to be one of the first five, it was like, okay, you're going to go lead this team. I'm like, what does that mean? I'm 23,
Wow.
24 years old. I don't know what any of that means, but baptism by fire, no better way to learn.
What was the energy like, 5 to 60?
Oh, so amazing, man. It was, I mean, we were all young, and I was already married, but a lot of my colleagues were not married. So there was a lot of good times happening. A lot of we worked hard and played really hard.
Wow. And like, were there, I guess, some of the things that you learned then about how professionals and salespeople and the process in hindsight were there formative? Because to today, because FinLocker and what it's doing in the space to me is very interesting. So back then, were there important I don't know, nuances that you picked up?
I would say it was less then. Back then, it was less about there was no technology, by the way. I mean, we were doing
Wow.
handwritten 1003s on, the mortgage application was an attached form, a VMP form, doesn't even exist anymore. And so we had no tech. I mean, our system was a green screen that like a mainframe. But the system was the process we built around these manual tasks that we had to do, and that was my first real job. I mean, I was hammering nails when I was in college, working for a builder, and so this was like the first real professional job where I was around professional people.
Hmm.
And it was a pretty good sized company. And so I distinctly remember, and I still think of these people a lot. There's like a half dozen, today, as I look back, they were probably in their 30s, but to me, when I was in my early 20s, they might as well have been 50, 60. But
Yeah.
they were like my mentors around how do you represent yourself in a workspace? How do you engage with other people? How do you lead people? And how do you serve? That was probably the most impactful learning was one of my mentors, not intentionally, but just by the way he acted. I learned how you serve others as a leader.
Wow.
And that was like and I never really studied like management books or anything at the time, but it was like, there was the managing with an iron fist versus serving from a place of caring and love, frankly, that this person did. And I watched him and how his teams performed versus the iron fist leaders. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, this works a lot
Wow.
better. So I hope that what I learned there kind of is rubbed off on the people that I've had the pleasure and honor of
Mm.
serving and leading, and hopefully some of them have learned from me the same way I learned from some of my earliest mentors.
Where do some of the, because many of our listeners are in different contexts, maybe a loan originator, whether it's
Sure.
broker or, a different medium, or it's an owner of an IMB, or like there's different levels, right? But on the loan originator perspective, where can one go wrong in a big way in today's world? And I asked you that specifically because you're really like a bird's eye view looking at all these different businesses trying to
Yeah.
empower them. So on the loan origination level, where can they go wrong? Where do you see?
I would, the same thing that I saw in the early 90s from loan originators derailing themselves, the same things happen today still. And there's a specific place that it happens, and it happened in the early in my career, and it still happens today. I watch it. It's
Huh.
right there in between our ears. We get in our own way, right? And that happens in a bunch of different ways. Sadly, I still see people that their egos are bigger than themselves, and that's just, I mean, that's not really appealing to create collaboration, and I don't think it's very appealing to consumers. And so
No.
the big egos tend to get in the way. Um, there's some people that have a kind of a scarcity mindset, and so they kind of keep all their best ideas to themselves, and they don't share and they don't collaborate. And then what I find is they don't really change and evolve because they've kind of created this closed environment where they're not going to share, and therefore they're less likely to have people share with them. And so I think those are like two, it's in between the ears, and it's ego, and then
Mm,
coming at this business with a mindset of scarcity versus abundance.
mm, wow. What about this? What was the inspiration behind this book that you authored? Rethinking, because Rethink Everything. What was the subtext there?
Rethink everything you know about being a next generation loan officer. So, a great question. I love talking about the book for a couple of reasons. One, and you already named my number one reason for talking about it, is Kyle Draper. I mean, I think before we hit record, you told me maybe I'm coming on before he does. So take
Yeah,
that, Kyle. Suck it,
yeah,
man.
yeah. Everybody's telling me how great Kyle is, and he's got to be on the show.
Yeah, if he was so great, he would have
So
been on
many,
before me, right?
so many people. Yeah, I'm going to tell him that. That's well, he'll hear it.
We
There
just
you
told
go.
him.
Yeah, we just told him.
So let me rewind and tell you how I met Kyle, and then that'll tell you how this book came about. So in late summer of 2023, yeah, 2023, um, I got a little package in the mail, and it was a purple book. And the purple book was Rethink Everything You Know About Social Media. It might be on my shelf somewhere back here.
Mm.
Um, the book was sent to me by somebody who I didn't know, just randomly shows up in my office. I open the thing. There's a QR code inside the cover. I scan the QR code. A video pops, and it's this guy, Scott Payne. And Scott says, "Hey, Brian, you don't know me, but I follow you on LinkedIn. I love what you're doing. I love your content. I really thought this book would be helpful for you. And you didn't ask me for anything, didn't ask for a meeting, nothing. Just a guy that was, seeking to serve and help others. And so, I started reading the book. It's an easy read. It's like 90 pages. If you haven't read it, you got to get it. I read it like 3 times the first weekend I had it. And I'm like, man, this is like Kyle just gets it. And I never met Kyle before. We weren't even following each other on
Wow.
socials. And so, like, for the next 2 weeks, I started taking screenshots of pages of his book and posting it on my LinkedIn. And then I put like it was like this book report I was doing on Kyle's
Wow.
book. And I don't know, about 3 days into this, I get a direct message from Kyle, and it's like, "Hey man, I don't know you, but," and I'm thinking, "Oh, I just screwed this guy up. I just gave away his whole book on social." He said, "But your posts are blowing my profile up. I love it. I thank you for loving on my book." He's like, "If you have 5 minutes, I'd love to get to know you."
Wow.
So we did like a Saturday morning, quick scheduled like a 15-minute conversation that went like 90 minutes. And in that conversation, I learned, who Kyle was as a person, what inspired him to write that purple book, which was his first book. He as we record this today, Jay, I think he's got 5 Rethink
Wow.
Everything books. This was number 2, the green book.
That's awesome.
And what I learned was he had this vision of helping people bring what their expertise and what they know to others through this Rethink Everything series. And so, we went away from that conversation, and I was laying in bed one night. I'm like, I think I know what the next book Kyle needs to write is. And in my mind, the working title at the time was Rethink Everything You Know About Being a Next Gen Home Buyer. It was going to be like written for the consumer, right?
Okay.
In a, if you know anything about FinLocker, we're very focused on helping early journey first time home buyers get, financially and emotionally ready for home buying and financing. So it was already something that I thought about and think about all the time. And so I said to Kyle, I sent him a text and said, "Hey, let's get back on a call. I have an idea for your next book." And he immediately responded. He said, "It's not my next book. It's our next book."
Wow.
And so we got on a call and we started talking, and in 30 seconds, each of us knew neither of us had enough practical expertise to write that book. But we each knew off the top of our heads 5 or 10 experts that deal with first time homebuyers every day on some capacity, some level. And we're like, what if we brought, 5 or 10 of our friends in and they shared their perspective, their feedback, their expertise? And what this thing turned into quickly was, yes, the next gen home buyer needs help, but who best to help the next gen home buyer than loan officers? And what both Kyle and I saw, and some of the people that we started to ask to join us on this mission, was that a lot of loan officers were stuck, right? They were just stuck. They didn't know what to do next and how best to build this
Mm.
evergreen pipeline of future home buyers. And so we pivoted the title to say, instead of it being focused on consumers, let's write a book for all loan officers to help them think differently or rethink
Mm.
everything about what they need to do to be successful going forward in this business. And so this green book is 37 chapters, 37 individual experts. Kyle and I did like
Wow.
this much. It's really the selfless expertise of these highly skilled, highly collaborative professionals in our industry that just spilled out their knowledge, if you will.
What, the where's the blue ocean in the sense, or the opportunity for those that take stock of the wisdom of those 37 that are in that position, right? That want to get in front of the first time home buyer. Where's the
Yeah.
opportunity? How do they compete against
So
these larger institutions that are
I love that.
they're looking at?
Yeah, I love that question. I would say there's a $1.75 billion example in with the recent Rocket acquisition of Redfin, right?
Wow.
If you think about Rocket as a brand and Redfin as a brand, two of the most powerful consumer facing brands in real estate and real estate finance, without question, right? I think Redfin cited they have over 50 million visitors to the Redfin website, right?
Wow.
We just saw arguably, in my opinion, the most impactful ad on the Super Bowl was Rockets um, "Own the Dream" commercial that was played at the Super Bowl for the first time. You remember that when it
You're
was?
gonna have to debate my wife about who's the better. She's the Eagles fan, and I was upstairs watching like a documentary or something. This is the good. I'm glad this Jenna could listen to this later.
Yeah.
I missed the
Well,
commercial. What's the commercial? What's the commercial?
the commercial is we all know the song "Take Me Home, Country Road." I am not going to sing it for you
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it would ruin your
yeah.
algorithm.
Well,
But throughout the commercial, the John Denver song "Take Me Home, Country Road" is
yeah.
playing, and it's showing young families, soldiers coming back from service, and people starting to create families in their first new home, and it just kind of goes. It's very
Huh.
very heartwarming ad. It never talks about mortgage or Rocket Mortgage or anything. And one of the coolest things was when the
Smart.
commercial ended, and you cut to the stadium, the Super Bowl, and the whole crowd now in unison and live is singing "Take Me Home, Country Road."
Oh man, that's
Crazy.
a huge
Yeah.
ROI. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Massive. So
Oh my God, who made that? I want them on the show. They're
you need to.
geniuses.
Yeah, you need to.
Oh my God, crazy.
You should
Wow.
connect after we're done. Remind me, and I'll connect you with the CMO of Rocket. He's amazing.
Amen. Wow,
So
that's crazy.
anyway, that's my example of loan officers. Is all we have to do is pay attention to what some of the smartest and biggest brands are doing as it relates to home and home buying and financing. And the other thing that Rocket has been doing at the same time is doubling down on their TPO channels, because they know that the purchase business for mortgage is still won at the street level, at the local level, right? We always hear real estate is hyper local. Well, I would argue that not only is real estate hyper local, but the financing of real estate still is won at the local level. And so every loan officer that maybe reacted negatively to the Rocket Redfin news saying, "Oh my God, they're coming after me," actually, I think it just reinforced that local that local real estate professional and mortgage professional is still very key, because underneath Redfin is like 200 distributed local real estate loan officers. um,
Is part of the implicit wisdom what you're saying, that if I'm on my Instagram or my social platform and I'm not telling a story the way this massive
yes.
brand is, I'm missing forward. Because how many times am I scrolling and I see somebody yelling at me to do
Yeah.
what they want me to do? So if you could elaborate on that a little bit. Am I
Yeah.
hitting some piece of this?
You just nailed it. You just nailed it. People, especially, I mean, you think about this, the first time home buyer as a cohort, as a segment of consumer, they're more or less going to be younger, right? So millennials and Gen Zs. Um,
Yeah, I just learned today, millennials 86. I'm sorry, 81 to 96.
yeah.
81,
You're a
that's,
millennial.
it was
I
like
did the math.
27 to 43 or 4 or
Yeah.
something. Yes, I'm,
I'm not.
recovering. I used to be really angry about it, actually. We could talk about that. It's another
Yeah.
podcast.
Now
Yeah.
you can point at the Gen Zs and say that's the people you should be angry with.
Yeah. No, there's literally an excerpt in 30 Days of Thought is no such thing as a millennial. And I grabbed a chair once and I was on a stand. I was like, there's no such thing as a. So that was in
Oh,
my adolescence. But
but now you've
sorry,
come to grips.
digression.
Yeah. So
Millennials. And,
you you nailed it, Jay. People do business with people they know, like, and trust, right? We always hear that said, right? And it's why it's so important that those of us that are in consumer facing roles, i.e., loan officers, have to be able to demonstrate enough to people so that they know you, or at least think they know you, they like you, or think they like you. And most important in this whole equation is that they trust you. I know
mm,
you know Kristen Messerly. Um,
yeah,
Kristen,
yes, yes. She
Kristen
works with
just
Dave, right?
yeah. She just published, I think, her third or fourth, maybe even fifth edition of her next gen homebuyer report.
Hmm.
There's a statistic in there that, again, if loan officers aren't paying attention, they need to. Her study, she surveyed 1,000 home buyers last year, and trust trust in loan officers was down like 20% year over year. And if we believe that people do business with people they know, like, and trust, and yet
Mm,
trust was down, what's going on? What it told me is most loan officers are still in this zone where the very first time they engage a home buyer is when they're introduced to them by a realtor. So point of sale. Now we're going to get to your opening quote.
interesting.
And so
Yeah.
if the first time as a buyer, home buyer, especially a first time home buyer, I'm meeting my loan officer with contract in hand, stress through the roof, anxiety, at an all-time high, I'm probably going to, I haven't developed any rapport with this person. And now they're going to be responsible for shepherding me through the biggest financial transaction of my life at this time. And so
Mm,
there's probably like this level of distrust that's already started. And so in contrast, if I as a loan officer can figure out how to get in front of you, Jay, the first time home buyer, not at the point of sale when I'm being introduced to you by an agent, but 6, 12, 18 months before I'm ready to buy. So that's the point of thought
mm,
when I'm first thinking about what it would look like if I were to own a home. Imagine the level of trust you can build by being their single best resource for financial education, financial preparation, leading to home ownership.
mm.
So that's what I mean when I say you got to find ways to compete at the point of thought so that you're not forced to compete at the point of sale. Because if you're forced to compete at the point of sale, you're probably competing on rate and cost at that point more than anything else.
How much of this because it could be a consequence of the tension of access to information. So
Yeah.
consumer accept, like I could read a textbook or kind of somewhat um on like, yeah, Plato's dialogues, but it doesn't mean I fully understand the depth. I haven't
Yeah.
gone through the with the professor and the homework and things.
Right.
Like, so I have a certain level of understanding, but not like an awareness or knowledge. I'm the consumer. I'm coming into that conversation. You're saying it's point of contact through the realtor. I might already be defensive because,
Yeah.
but then you give me a lot of information and I'm even more defensive. Is that, what do you
Right.
think? Like, is that adding a layer of almost like buyer apprehension as a consequence of our access of information, consumers'
So I
access of
think,
information?
I mean, one could argue that never has there been more information available at our fingertips. But how do you know which information is trustworthy, which person, if you're following all these
No,
people,
no.
and you don't know
Yeah.
until you actually start engaging with people, right? um, and it's, to me, it's like you have to you have to give before you can ask.
Mm,
So as a loan officer, if you're in this position with this cohort of home buyers that are 6 18 months away from buying, you're there's nothing to ask for yet, right? So there shouldn't be any anxiety or stress around worrying about the rate or the cost for close, all that stuff, because we're not even at a point where that even matters. We're at a point now where I'm just going to give you all of my knowledge and experience as a professional, as a housing finance professional. And and if at the end of that process you don't feel like I've earned the right to win your business, then that's on me, not you as a consumer, right? So but it's
What
a different
mediums would
mindset.
you suggest? Well, yeah, what mediums would you suggest the listeners that are in, yeah, that are in this like, so let's say loan officer,
Yeah,
uh, to leverage to be top of mind before the thoughts
yeah.
are even happening, right? The thought versus the point of sale. Is this a content conversation?
I think
Is it
it's
something else?
I think it's a little bit of everything, right? So
Okay.
if we double down on our comments that real estate and purchase mortgage real estate financing is hyper local, I think social is very important. There's no question about it. I think it's highly impactful and effective. But as you know, not everybody's as comfortable being on social. That's it is what it is. But here's what I would tell the audience: if if a young person today is referred to a loan officer by an agent, what do you think that home buyer, what's the first thing they're doing? They're going to your Facebook, your Instagram, your LinkedIn. They're looking us up anyway. And so I
Yeah,
better I
you know,
better
you
have
bring
some
up a great
presence.
point. Are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt's research, Anxious
No,
Generation?
no.
Jonathan Haidt, moral psychologist, and he's got the happiness hypothesis. He talks about that the generation coming up uh, cannot read facial expressions, and
Mm,
empathy actually is going down dramatically as a consequence of social integration happening through these technologies versus through
yeah,
playing outside and things. So like, okay, younger generation, what are they going to do? We're going to look things. I'm constantly looking
yeah.
things up with everything. We're sleuthing around.
But you look people up. You're looking.
Absolutely. So what does that do for the balance of power between the professional and the layperson, especially when the layperson perceives themselves as an expert
Right.
and there's already stress?
Yeah.
What do you think? Like what? And yeah. So just
So just to poke at the social media thread, I think this is where putting content on social that it's not this is not about pounding your chest and say, look at me, I did 14 million last month. Who cares? Nobody cares. This is about telling
yeah.
stories on social about how your expertise helped the Smith family get into their first new home, right? Or help the Jones family who was expecting one child, but all found out they're having twins or triplets, and now they need to go from their 2 bedroom ranch to
Mm.
a three bedroom colonial, whatever. It's telling stories about how your expertise as a loan officer helped somebody solve a problem they had, right? And so
Mm.
that you do that on social. That's the better use of social, is to tell the stories of the hardest deals you worked in a way that makes the consumer the hero in the story. You're just the facilitator. You just help them become the hero. And you can do it in a way that's actually teaching, because we all know that as a loan officer, if I had this one deal that looked like this, there's probably 20 other
It's
people that
great.
have the same exact scenario, and they're
I
probably.
think you bring up a really profound point, and this is why those that talk about themselves and what they're accomplished, that might be a different business.
Yeah,
Maybe they're selling coaching.
yeah, there you go.
Those that are talking about their customers, they're representing their culture.
Yeah, love that.
Because
Love
that's a dichotomy, right?
it.
Like,
Yeah,
hey, look at my volume. Well, okay, are you selling a program to learn how to be that?
yeah,
Versus, hey, here are my customers. That's just kind of, how to use it, to actually build a customer base. So you're, how do you consider yourself always been an educator or a teacher?
yeah, a coach. And I coached youth football all the way through
Wow.
high school football for 15 years. So, and then I was, I've for before making the move into FinLocker, I was a sales leader of teams, right? And so you're coaching all the time, trying to coach to get the best out of.
How did you get people to work together under pressure? What worked?
Um, so if I go back and think of, like, I was at Flagstar Bank,
Yeah, huge.
big company, had one of the best teams in the business there. What we were really good at was sharing, and not just sharing, like, again, the good stuff that happened. I did 50 million this month. Yeah, great. Who cares? We got good at sharing the hard stuff. Like, our team got really good at making other team members aware, this was an issue I had, and here's how we solved it, or here's how I solved it, or this was a resource I found that helped me solve this problem. So we had a team that collaborated well, but it's because they cared, and they cared about each other more than themselves, I think, is really
Mm.
what it amounted to.
Care led to vulnerability, led to collaboration type of
Yes, totally.
waterfall.
Yeah. I mean, these are
Were
people
you?
today, these people are spread in a bunch of different companies, and there's probably not a week that goes by that I'm not in a text thread with one or more of
Wow.
my former colleagues. I love it.
Yeah. What advice do you have our audience of how to develop and maintain relationships over a career? Because you've had a career now, clearly.
Yeah, I think
I'm not. It's not over. I'm just.
no, 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 thank you. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
not
You're still getting steam here. I was
we're
watching your David Licken
oh,
podcast. It's like, damn, he's 50 something years. So a
how
lot.
about Licken, man? He is a machine. That
Yeah,
dude's
50
he's 74
plus.
years old. He's got more energy than both of us
Wow.
combined, probably.
Yeah, yeah. Amen.
So I think the question was around
Yeah,
these
developing
the
these
yeah.
relationships and maintaining them for
I,
such a tenure.
so I think the only way you can have real relationships that have longevity is if they're authentic and genuine.
Hmm.
And from my seat, I always feel like I need to make sure that I'm intentional about giving more than I take. And I think that, to me, that's like the ledger I look at. It's, if I'm giving more than I'm taking, then I know that I can feel like in my heart that I can go ask for something every once in a while without feeling guilty about asking, because I know that
Wow.
I've given more than I've taken out of this bucket, if you will. So
Hmm.
I think if you lead from a position of wanting to serve others first and give before asking or taking, then you by definition, or you're going to create you're going to create relationships, because the people that you're giving to know that you're there for them, right? Versus there for yourself.
Hmm. What originally interested you about FinLocker? Because I was seeing that you were an early investor in actually the organizations. What, 2014, around that time it started?
Yep, yep. So the company was founded by some friends of mine, and I was at Flagstar at the time when they were, standing up the business, and so we had them come in. We did some demos. We looked at the product. The initial the initial use case was really focused on something in the middle of the loan manufacturing process, namely helping processors assess consumers' banking data, bank statements, et cetera. That wasn't overly exciting
Hmm.
to me, but the core of what they built to facilitate that was interesting. And so I just kept kind of tabs on things for 18 months or so. And it wasn't until like the winter of maybe 2018 where I got some visibility into their roadmap, where they were taking the product. And the product was morphing from this point solution in the middle of the loan manufacturing process to become more of a holistic consumer financial wellness type
Hmm.
experience with a focus on home ownership. And I thought, first of all, I looked at the landscape of tech that was available to lenders, and I'm like, well, there's nobody else doing this. That's a good thing, maybe.
Huh.
uh,
Yeah.
and I think this thing I think this concept of, it back then, mint.com, Credit Sesame, Credit Karma were kind of on their growth curve up. So consumers at scale, millions of consumers were starting to use financial tools like that, financial apps, but nobody had done anything that was specific to home ownership yet, other than what we did as an industry in the middle of the loan manufacturing
And
process.
it's part of the trade-off when I, as a consumer, I use those applications. They're giving me awareness to information, and they're giving me, I guess, structure for clarity and organization. However, the the reciprocation there is I'm giving them something of value that then they can
Yeah.
monetize and so on. So there's a trade-off there. And is it that one of the unique value propositions of FinLocker would be you're going to be able to get that, and that there isn't that trade-off, but there's a relationship deepening with your advisor or something. I
There you
want to see
go.
if I can kind of,
You
and I maybe
yeah.
say that in English. I'm not really speaking clearly. I think like if I sign up for one of these products to understand my credit, there's going to be a consequence because like I'm accessing it, that information. Or if I'm on the mint and I'm using that for my personal finance, my information, I can get that, I get value, but someone is going to monetize that.
Yes.
So
There
if
you
you
go.
can elaborate on that, I found that
Yeah.
very interesting when I was preparing
Yeah.
for
Yeah. I love
the
that.
huge value add there.
Yeah. So if we think about the mints, the Credit Karmas of the world, those type of financial apps, almost every one of those big box, big brand apps is really a lead gen platform using personal financial fitness type tools as the hook to get you in as a consumer. But then you're being marketed and advertised for credit cards, personal loans, et cetera, et cetera, and even being sold to mortgage companies as a lead, right? And so now if we want to connect the dots to a next gen loan officer
Yeah.
who leads with education, who's willing to play the long game for 6, 12, 18 months, preparing somebody very early in their journey at the point of thought to get them confident, and with certainty to a place where they're ready to buy. The FinLocker tool set, this FinLocker application delivered to a consumer from a trusted home ownership advisor. The tools that I deliver as an advisor to you as that early journey home buyer are going to help you immensely understand your personal finances, your credit, and how it all packages up in terms of where you are in being ready to buy, which I talk about. There's two aspects of home ownership readiness. There's the financial readiness aspect, and then probably the bigger understated is the emotional readiness aspect of home ownership, right? And what we coach on with our product is loan officers that truly lead with education, that are willing to invest months into a consumer and help them get to this place of financial confidence, are at the same time helping that consumer get to a place of emotional readiness,
Mm.
so that when it is time to buy, they're doing it. There's always going to be anxiety, but they're doing it not at a heightened level of anxiety, at a manageable level of anxiety, maybe a healthy level of anxiety. And so
Mm.
what we think about, and Dave Savage is the master of this mindset, right? He talks so much about the modern loan advisor
Mm.
is an educator first. And so what we help that modern loan advisor do is be the best educator with the best modern technology experience for the consumers they're working with. So they really go hand in hand. I don't believe that technology alone is enough. I'm also not convinced that a loan officer alone today is enough. I think when you bring the mindset of an educate first loan officer with modern technology, then you have a solution that can win against the biggest brands in those local communities.
Is there functional utility in maintaining relationship? Let's say I'm a first time home buyer. Now I'm no longer. We've done business together.
Yeah.
It I was involved in this application to gather information. I believe in, I love the idea that my data was my data,
Yeah.
uh, isn't it statistically that the loan making many loan professionals um may not do the next
Yeah.
debt
It's like, I think the last,
deal,
the last
home.
Black Knight study said it less than 20% of loan officers do the second, second home purchase or loan with a consumer, right?
So is there a relationship with, hey, my relationship now is in this ecosystem. I'm gonna have an increased likelihood to do that next loan.
I
Is there
hope
functional utility in that?
yeah, there's definitely utility. So what we do is we talked already about the app being this financial readiness set of
Yeah.
tools, right? So the minute I buy my first home, I can now go back into my app and connect that property in my app. Simple, just type in the address. And now that our technology goes and grabs the property value, we have an API that gets the property value. We update that every 30 days. So now this is why we talk about,
So people could check their property. People like to check their
they
property. I
love
had
it.
a
Yeah.
father-in-law was sending me pictures. Hey, here's your property value. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. They love it. They
people
love it.
like to check your property value.
So we go a little
Okay,
further. We
that's
say,
good.
okay, well, you link your property. Now let's connect directly to the mortgage you just closed on.
Okay.
And so now in real time, I'm bringing down the most recent property value and I'm combining it with the current mortgage balance from that linked mortgage account in the app. And so now I have this really good view of the equity I'm building in my property. And then Jay, what we do is we take that equity position and we position it with the other financial accounts that the consumer may have connected along the way of preparing. So now as a young first time home buyer, I have this single pane of glass view of
Hmm.
my entire finances, including my largest asset, the home, and my largest liability, the loan on that home. And so when I look at like my personal net worth on our main dashboard,
Yep.
it encompasses my banking accounts, any investment accounts, as well as the net equity in this home that I have.
Are you finding that the younger generations are not only more interested in this than the past, less fearful, but almost it's a non-negotiable, or it's a must
I,
have?
I do think it's I do think the digital experience, not just in the loan process, is a non-negotiable must-have, but I think it's tools like ours that are pre-transaction engagement are becoming, must-haves.
So let's say we bought a home, I had my advisor, I'm all about having my financials locked away safe from institutions. I like to check on my stuff. This is
Yep.
something I use. Where's the where's the integration fall in with the advisor 3 months from now? And
Yeah.
because if I'm the advisor, I'm the loan officer. I'm the loan officer. That's my client. They're in there. They're
Yeah.
building their life. I might forget to call them because, or I might. So is there?
So
How
we
does it program
couple
back or
yeah, I love that.
feedback?
First of all, in the app itself, the loan officer is always present. So there's like a digital card, if you will. The loan officer is always in there. We have some specific journeys or communications that push to the consumer that remind them
Like,
of
you
the
ever
loan
see the movie
officer.
Her? You ever see the movie Her?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
can she talk to me? No,
Pretty
no, I'm
soon.
just saying, like Jay is talking to you.
Pretty
Hey,
soon.
how are
Pretty
you?
soon. Yeah, pretty soon. That's the scary
Yeah,
part.
yeah.
But
I'm not even saying that in a negative way. I actually
no,
haven't seen
no.
the movie, but it seemed like if it's I'm still communicating with my customer
Yeah, they're
in some way.
all the communications that our tech pushes out to the end consumer come from the product name, could be the mortgage company's product name, but then down to the individual, the human, the loan officer. They're at the bottom of every communication. So it's like a constant reminder of who provided this tool to me.
Mm.
But one
Oh,
thing
go ahead,
that's
go ahead. Yeah.
something that I think will connect the dots on that ongoing engagement is the consumer when they download and create an account right from the onset, they're invited to share access to not their entire set of data, but this subset of data, and we kind of communicate to the consumer that this subset of data, which is really milestones, achievements, activities, some high level non-PII type information is most useful for your loan officer who's helping you prepare. And then again, when you pivot from preparing to now owning, we pivot the experience so that your loan officer doesn't go away when the transaction ends. They are now your home ownership advisor, and they're here to advise you on what's the next best thing you should
I
think
want to
about.
make sure I get, but when we go from thought in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I build a relationship with someone, we've had conversations. They love this technology. We're not doing it business today, but they're invested in it. Is there a psychological almost skin in the game, like Nassim Nicholas Taleb, or like an ownership, a sense of ownership, like the consumer, they've downloaded it, they're using it. How, in their mind, they already have their person. They just aren't there yet. You know what I'm
I
saying? Like,
think
I feel
I
like
think
I'm
we're
betraying my person
right. I think we're
if I go
positioning.
and yeah, go ahead.
I think we're between this green book, between the technology that we're developing, between the unbelievably amazing work that First Home IQ, Savage and Bookspan and Kristen Messerly do. I think we're all positioning loan officers to think differently, rethink everything again. And if you think about like our insurance agents, right? Our financial planners, we don't just they're not just like transactionally one and done. They become part, like our insurance agents, whether it's home and auto or either or, those policies auto renew, and our agents are typically involved in that process, right? Mortgage has just never been that way, and
Mm.
and I would argue that never has the loan officer been better positioned if they invest the time, especially for first time home buyers, into building trust through education. I believe they've earned the right at that point to not just ask, but make the assumption that they are now the home ownership advisor for that consumer for the next 30 years.
Is it in a CR, customer relationship management aspect to this?
I would
Uh,
say that we're not a CRM, but we have components. Our tech has components of a CRM, but we're not the place that you should manage your entire database. We're a place where your database, your CRM, should be connected to
I'm
this
just thinking,
product.
like, if I have 100 potential clients that value this technology,
Yeah.
is there a dashboard I could look at
Oh
them
yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
like,
You.
hey, like I
Yes.
draw this out on easels, like
Yeah.
before they had a CRM, like
Yeah.
I know it's all right there. I got to know who my people are.
Yeah.
Like,
So to your example, if I had 100, prospective first time home buyers going through the readiness journey, as a loan officer in the admin portal, the back end of FinLocker, if you will, I would see a dashboard with all these filters of my 100 consumers. Here's the ones that are most ready, the closest to being ready to buy. Here's the cohort that need help with credit
how does it know
specifically.
this? Because
So
of data?
we
Oh,
for every consumer, we measure their readiness across 4 dimensions: cash to close, credit, income, employment, and DTI. And so in the back end of our product, we show the loan officer where
yep.
each of their consumer is on those 4 dimensions by showing stars, right?
Because they may not know where they are.
That's it.
If they did, they'd be the advisor.
That's right. That's
So
exactly right.
access information gives a reason to reach out,
That's right.
and
Yep.
maybe confidence, because it
Yes.
can be weird to follow up with somebody if you haven't talked to them in a while.
Right.
Oh wow, that's really powerful. Brian, I could talk to you all day about this. You have to come back. I will
Let's
have to
do
go
it.
even. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I am curious about this. Do you have a word for 2025 if you were to consolidate it to?
I'm gonna you're the first person that's asked me that question in 2025. And it's going to be a compound word. I don't even know if this is going to qualify, but give more. That's it.
I love
Give
it.
more. If we all woke up every day with that mindset, give more, we're going to have more business than we should ever have.
Brian, you're welcome back anytime. I love the message, especially in the mortgage industry. Give more. If you're listening to this, where can people follow you fastest? They can connect to you. I know you're out there putting out great
LinkedIn.
education.
That's my CRM. That's where I live. So follow me on LinkedIn. I'd love to engage with any and all of your audience, Jay. And I appreciate you having me on, man. It's an honor.
Yeah, thank you. It's the first value culture matters is collaboration, actually, the
There you
C.
go.
And it means give first, intend to help, and get started today. So we clearly were meant to meet. If
That's
you're
right.
listening to this episode, share this to a friend that needs to hear it. Follow Brian, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. And email or send Kyle Draper a message. Tell him to get his butt on the show.
That's right.
All right. See you all next time.